Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the debut record from Fetal Blood Eagle, Indoctrinate, out February 25th on Listenable Records. The album has 10 tracks, 34 minutes in length, and they are an American/European death metal band. Now, as far as the design of this record goes, I like the simple approach that it has. It's not overcomplicated. It's an album that's very compact. What you see at the beginning is exactly what you're going to experience all the way through. There are a few ripples, but not a lot. So it's an album that stays cohesive, stays balanced, it stays together. It gives it almost a single shape from start to finish. An album that enhances all the commonalities that these songs have and showcases very little of the disparities that are in place. Once you look at a structure like this, and once you look at a record like this, having 34 minutes in length is absolutely perfect and plays a very important role in how engaging the album is going to be. If this record was 10 minutes longer, perhaps even 5 minutes longer, it loses a little bit of that playability. It becomes perhaps slightly redundant and becomes repetitive at the same time. You want to keep the listener engaged, you want to keep the listener connected, and you want the album to feel fresh. When you have this much brutality and you have this sort of style where everything comes together as one, you want the experience to be quick, to be fast, to be furious, to be heavy, to be brutal. You blink and the album is done. And that's exactly what happens with this record. Once you move into the Soundscape, this is an old school death metal album, but it has modern production values. So you're not going to get a lot of grit. This is not an album that has grittiness. It doesn't feel murky. It doesn't feel muddied up. It's an album that's really well defined in the sound experience and what each element is providing to that sound experience. You could really break it down. You could hear the drums, the dual guitars, the bass, vocals. Everything comes in its own lane, but then everything weaves in together in order to create this very robust, very thick soundscape that has a lot of volume, and there's heaviness in that volume. The heaviness is actually the backdrop, the foundation of the album that then pushes everything else into the forefront, allowing that volume to expand, to become really big and become the calling card of the entire record. Song in and song out, that's what you're going to get out of this album. And I love that sound. I love this death metal sound because it has thickness, it has volume. Sometimes you could even say it has some grooviness, but it never really loses its allure, it never really loses its aggression, and it never really loses its intensity. So it has all of those old school elements, but just coming together in a more modern way that allows the album overall to be more palpable, a lot easier to digest. Now, the drums on this record are phenomenal. Powerful drums from start to finish. If there's one thing that stays very consistent, is how heavy the drums are, the heaviness that they create, and what they do to the overall soundscape on each and every single song. They're not just there to ground the record and ground the tracks. They're there to build the road in which everything else travels upon, and that stays consistent from start to finish, but never really overpowering the other elements. You never feel like the heaviness that you're getting from the drums or the aggression that you're getting from the drums is overshadowing the vocals or the guitars or anything else. They have their own role and they stay very well connected, weaving in all the other pieces in order for the sound to feel crisp, to feel clear, but still powerful across all parameters. Now, the guitars drive on top of that road. The guitars are very driven from start to finish. On one hand, they connect really well with the heavier side of the album, with the heavier side of the sound, and they build that bridge then into a more driven sound, chunky at times, even groovy in some spots, that allows the album to have this sense of dynamic movement from start to finish within each and every single song. So it's really important to have this bridge between what the drums are doing and what you want the overall sound experience to be for the listener. And I feel like having two guitars coming in with dual roles helps tremendously to create that movement all around. Now, the vocals are super interesting because they don't have a one-size-fits-all. They do have a pattern, but the pattern is very dynamic. So it's not like you're going to get the same style, the same tone, the same vocal approach in the first song, and then you're going to get it all the way through. Very traditional in classic death metal albums. No, there's a little bit more live, there's a little bit more energy, there's a little bit more of ebbs and flows that create movement, that make the songs feel that like they have a lot more life. Now, within that range, there is a pattern that emerges that it's going to be very easy to detect exactly which style you're going to get where. But it works well because you still have that movement. You still don't have that static linear style vocals from start to finish that would make the album feel even perhaps more repetitive, even perhaps more redundant. So having this approach mixed in with a great structure in the time frame of the album itself, you have a record that has all the right ingredients to connect with a death metal listener. I absolutely love this record. I love the sound. I love the experience. I love the length of the album. I love the fact that I don't get tired of it. I want to come back for more. So for a debut record, I think this album showcases the talent that the band members have, the experience that they have with their own bands, coming into this project, creating this band, and putting together a record that knows exactly what they want and what they can give and what the listener is going to take away from it. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Razorwire Communion. The drums on this song are brutal. I mean, I could say that about every track on the album, but they really are brutal on this song. They pave the way for the whole track. The whole track is built on those drums. The guitars then drive on top of it, and then the vocals are sitting behind the steering wheel, dictating exactly the direction that the track is going to take. This is the style of song you have here. A song that's very intense, both musically and vocally, making at the same time the song feel very dynamic, because while it doesn't have peaks and valleys, it still feels very volatile within its own existence. And then you have a great guitar solo that has an old school flavor to it that just completes the track. Next you have Only Meth Is Real, face melting from the start. This is a song that the moment it starts, you know exactly what you're getting yourself into. Once again, very heavy drums, packing the sound. The bass pops perhaps more on this song than on the previous track, because you can really feel the bass helping the drums create a connection between what's happening underneath the hood and what's happening on top of it. So very interesting aspect, because they also allow the bass to kind of come into the forefront a little bit more on this track, and that helps define the overall experience. The guitars have heaviness and they have chunkiness, and they also drive the sound. So you have two parallel worlds here that really makes this song feel like it has a lot of movement from start to finish. The vocals come in and they weave themselves with different styles, with different tones, with different approaches, but they help the song create movement. They help the song feel more engaging, feel more entertaining. It's a track that really has a lot to offer. It has a lot of heaviness, it's very robust, and it has a ton of intensity from start all the way to the end. Last but not least, Cinder Block Suicide. This is the closing track on the album, and it starts off very heavy and methodic. It almost feels like it's dragging you through it. And it almost, what it loses in speed, it gains in heaviness. Now, it doesn't stay that way all the way through. There is a little bit of a sense of progression, a sense of evolving, so you start to see the track becoming a little bit faster, moving a little bit better, more freely, if you will. But it doesn't lose any of the heaviness that it has. The heaviness is still there, and it actually feels like it's becoming heavier and heavier as it moves along. It's a track that gets bigger, it gets louder, it gets heavier, it just has great movement. Now, the guitars break through with the solo. The solo is really important for this song because it almost feels like it shatters the track. It creates a divide between what came before and what comes after, allowing the song to break a little bit from its patterns, allowing the track at the same time to feel a little bit more robust, to feel a little bit more consistent. Great track to close off the album because it has all the elements that we saw throughout the entire record in one single track. This is it. Fetal Blood Eagle with Indoctrinate, out February 25th on Listenable Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.